Before you, are we officially starting yet, Emily?
1 second. Um, 1 second. Okay. Okay, looks good.
Exactly. This is my favorite biennial. 2004 biennial catalog was published in 2 parts.
Okay.
All right. Emily, is this the part where the producer tells John how
Roll
to
'em.
start the meeting? Is this it?
Roll 'em.
We're starting? This is it. I guess that's it. We've started. Um, well, it's been a while since we've been on a Tuning Fork
Ah,
live broadcast. Our last guest was Alex Winter, the actor and film director.
oh,
So, Fred, thank you for being our esteemed guest,
sure.
episode 42.
My pleasure.
Um, I just want to note that this is the 42nd episode. Emily and I began the Tuning Fork as a sort of safe place to meet during COVID, during the lockdown.
Oh, uh-huh.
And the idea was to create a very comfortable and familiar space for people to get together. At that time, it was on a weekly basis, Fred.
Mm.
So I think between 2020, we began with Anne Waldman, the poet and cultural activist, self-described cultural activist, by the way. Um, and we did it every week during the lockdown.
Mm.
And then we tapered off to once a month as lockdown eased.
Mm-hmm.
And Emily and I began to travel to Europe, immediately to Italy, where we were met by Margaret Vidmer eventually, and we produced a number of community events,
Huh.
sort of elaborating this idea of community gathering, but doing
Nice.
it on the street
Oh,
through immersive performance art events.
uh-huh.
So since August, Fred, we've been occupied with our biweekly Tuning Fork radio show. And yours is the first show of 2024. And I personally couldn't be more ecstatic and
Me
thrilled and
too.
rewarded. Um, Emily's the producer. And as you can see, there's some lovely flowers behind her. Um, that's our front porch.
Oh, nice.
And Fred, we invite you, of course, to come and visit us and perhaps
Certainly.
bring some work with you that we can share with
Oh, yes.
very diverse community in Delhi
Ah, nice.
at the SUNY Delhi.
Uh-huh. Oh, cool.
It's so thrilling that Fred and Aviva and I went to college together, and that's a while ago. In 1972, we began. I think quite amazing that there were only 40 students at the time
Right.
admitted to the visual arts department out of 800 applicants.
That's right.
So what did we do right?
I don't know.
Did you apply to any other schools, Fred, besides SUNY Purchase?
Uh, just yeah, I think it was just a couple. Didn't get
SVA
it. No. Cooper Union,
or Cooper?
which yeah.
Did they
Uh,
did they accept you?
no.
Uh, okay, so
And I'm quite happy that they didn't.
Haka was there at the time, wasn't he?
I guess so. I don't know. Was he?
Yeah, I think he was. Did you ever connect with him, Hans Haka?
Oh, yeah. Years later, we became good friends. And yeah, but and I guess I taught it a couple of times at Cooper, maybe either filling in for him or someone else. Yeah.
Oh, good.
So
That
yeah.
sounds great. That sounds
So
fun.
yeah.
Um, want to welcome Margaret Widmer from Amsterdam, our partner and,
Oh, great.
collaborator and board member. There's Margaret. Greetings, Margaret. People are just going to be, dropping in, Fred, during the
Oh,
talk.
okay.
And it's kind of like
Oh, yeah,
we-
there are more
we
people
try-
here.
we've tried to sustain this sort of comfortable dining room feeling, but not to dismiss the importance of scholarship and sharing methodology and hopefully nurturing cultural activism internationally.
Mhm.
I might call out to people coming in that we know, but please everyone feel welcome. And the way that our format is that we speak with Fred for about 60 minutes or so.
Mhm.
We were already burned up 6 minutes and warming up the internet together.
And we
Yeah.
have a PowerPoint to share also.
Oh, thank you, Em. Yeah. And we're live on YouTube and Facebook Live, and also today for the first time on Instagram. Hello, Instagram community. So a lot of people will have benefit of this contact with your work, Fred. Tuning Fork obviously represents this opportunity to resonate with your mind, with the instruments of your work, and to interact with you personally after about 60 minutes of the show.
Okay,
People can,
great.
all of our friends here around the world and in the United States. Ron Smith is I always forget, is it Cambridge? Yeah, okay. And yeah, there's Jude Ray up in near Rhinebeck, and
Oh,
Sally Harris in Minnesota. Aviva's in Sunnyside, Queens. Isabel Kata is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Renee Bouchard in southwestern Vermont. And everybody live out there on the metasphere.
great.
I think Dan Cameron just said hi. I think
Ah, that's nice.
He's just sent me a text message. Lots of love to you, Fred, from Meredith Monk.
Oh, that's so sweet.
She's on a plane to New Mexico.
Uh-huh.
I think she has a retreat house there. She's a
Oh.
Buddhist, and
Oh.
she does have a retreat house out there, I know. Iris Khan and Kim Do send their love.
Oh, that's great.
They're on the
Yeah.
highway. They're going
Oh,
to try to
really?
tune in on Route 87, coming south from Woodstock area.
Oh, oh,
And
cool.
Ron Rocco, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning for him in
Oh,
China.
Oh,
I don't
cool.
know if Victoria Vesna is now over there in Milan, New York, I think. No, not yet, but on the East Coast at least. And let's see, Hans Hake, yeah, Sublime Tremor. Okay, by the way, Fred, have you
Yeah.
seen American Fiction
No.
with Jeffrey Wright?
Oh, no, I haven't.
I think it'll blow you away.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
I'll look for that one.
It's
He's great. He's terrific.
Oh my God, yeah. And I had the sublime privilege of speaking with Jeffrey back in somewhere in the beginning of the 21st century
Oh,
at the Tribeca Film Festival.
uh-huh.
And he sort of downloaded in a very passionate way the status of the African American
Uh-huh.
in terms of the frequency and percentage of young Black men who were imprisoned,
Oh, yes. Oh,
yeah, and Puerto Ricans and people of color.
hmm
And here Jeffrey is now, nominated for an Academy Award.
hmm
Anyway, Fred, as we only have a short amount of time, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, and Emily too.
Sure.
But, but John, do you want to also share the PowerPoint?
I see on my monitor that we have about 27 images.
Okay.
Why don't we wait about 20 minutes before doing that, Em?
Okay.
And then we can just, move through them.
We can move through them. Mhm.
Okay.
People can have a little context. We have a little context
All right.
to see them. And just thank you, Emily, for that. Fred, I was thinking about when you were a young man, a young boy, perhaps, you had the unfortunate experience of being discriminated. Somehow, I read that, is it true that you guys moved to Westchester County?
Yes, after living, born in the Bronx, living in Brooklyn, and then to Westchester for elementary school.
Oh, where were you in Westchester?
Yonkers, the sort of suburban part of Yonkers, which was just a lot of kind of open fields and a small community of homes. Really nice. Well, it
Yeah.
was a nice place.
And did you feel in some way the sort of social context of
Well, I was so young, and so I was the only black kid in the school, in the neighborhood, etc. So I was different, but I I I was all. But the thing is, I was always different in various ways. So it wasn't I didn't fit in, uh, but that would have been par for the course if I was in the Bronx also, but just in a different way. Of course, I didn't know that, but it was just. But I had a good friend, uh, uh, a few, but one that Iris Khan. She and I went to elementary school together, uh, and so even though I didn't have a plethora of friends, because I was not good in sports or didn't really care about it, uh, that was, in I guess most boys in a lot of schools, that's the center of their recreational life, and that was not mine.
yeah.
So that was not of interest to me, and I wasn't bothered by it at all. It just meant I was kind of a everybody knew me and liked me, but I was pretty much a loner. But we had a huge house and a big backyard, so I basically was able to kind of be myself uh, and sort of in the woods and things like that. It wasn't, the city gives you other benefits and other issues, and so in hindsight, I really was happy to leave Westchester, but in hindsight, it was kind of considering the kind of boy I was, the kind of best environment uh, for me. There was no outright uh, racism or anything like that, or everybody was
Huh.
young, and so it didn't have anything happen along those lines. I was just the different one, so uh, so it was really minor. It wasn't whatever topics came up or ideas or thoughts. It was very like naive stuff. And the only thing I remember is I was walking down the hill to the school, and this boy who was, I guess, was older than me, probably, and maybe in junior high school. He stopped me, and of course, obviously, everyone knew me. I didn't know everybody because I stood out. And he said, uh, "What did he say? Oh gosh, it was kind of funny." He says, he looked at me and said, "Is Sonny Liston your father?" And just making a joke. And I said, "Yes." And he all of a sudden stopped. It was the smartest thing I ever did. He
I
backed
get it.
off and was gone.
I was hoping that was your reply.
Yeah.
But from this sort of I don't mean to say this in any kind of an presumptuous way, but or arrogant way, but sometimes when we're discriminated, we have this opportunity to look into the mind of those who are discriminating
Mhm.
and to recognize this mega structure of the hierarchy
Mhm.
and how it works. And I wonder, when you were a kid, it sounds to me like in that instance you were able to instantaneously recognize the thing to say that would protect you,
Yeah, yeah.
that you had analyzed the situation instantaneously.
Yeah. That's right.
Now, did you bring that kind of perception into your work when looking at, let's say, systemic discrimination as a kind of perception, of kind of ability to look into structures and situations and to deconstruct them?
I should, more than likely, yes. I just think that it became the way that for me to be able to exist in the world, in a world that, whether it was, suburban Westchester or the Bronx, to be able to survive it, because I was like really not of either environment. I was just different. And so it did help me to kind of understand where other people were, and where their mindset was, and what their interests were, what they didn't know, and what they did know, and sort of use that to sort of navigate my life and keep me, as you say, safe. Um, so yeah, and you just get asked a lot of, well, I'm sure there are others here who have been asked various questions for various reasons, but some people are obviously curious, other people are just trying to one up you, and so you sort of, it makes you very aware of people and their needs, their wants, and their, you know aspects of them that they don't know they're letting you know.
Continue with that. Aspects of them they don't know what.
Oh, I said aspects of them, but they don't know that you are understanding about them, essentially,
And
or what you're
and
seeing in them.
they may not know their own programming too.
That's what I'm trying to say, that uh,
Yeah.
they don't realize that how would I be able to know them in a certain way, or how, but it helped me navigate the environment. I never had any problems, even, in the South Bronx. But it was all, all, I had they couldn't understand me at all because of where, my family was from and where we were living, and uh, had lived before. So I realized pretty early that I understood them more than they understood me.
By the way, was there time at SUNY Purchase in the 70s for you to incubate some of the work that you were eventually doing? Was that something that was a formidable time for you?
Well, I think that the freedom of the environment, and the newness of it,
Right.
the lack of, you know rules for how this college is set up and what they expect of you, and how, everybody was new, the faculty, everything was new. So it was really a great environment to kind of understand yourself, meet people that you'd never meet before, and grow from our mutual not knowing.
Was that an attractive element for you to decide to go there?
Well, I certainly was. I think that's why, Cooperwood might not have been good for me, because it was so in love with itself, and also um, they knew their position, their status, or what they felt they were, and and so, then you have to be measure up to that, and we didn't have that. It was all new, so there was not these upperclassmen that all of us would put you down or whatever.
Yeah.
ex and
We-
so we you know, it was a very free environment.
We were branding SUNY
That's
Purchase. And
that's right,
we didn't
exactly.
know it. But
I went into the basement to see it of the museum to see if what you had put on the mirrors were still there, but they're not up there anymore. I don't know if you ever do you remember
this is
that?
it's just the first selfie ever made. Do you remember what it said, Fred?
I don't remember what it said. What did it say?
It said, "This is a self-portrait." In
Yeah, for selfie.
stencil letters, 1 inch high.
Yeah, yes, I
And
remember
and
that
in
part.
the corner, this is the killer. Please do not remove property of SUNY Purchase. I hope that was a contagious presence for you.
That was great. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Apparently.
I still remember it, so.
Yeah, that's lovely, and we'll bring it back. I think we should bring it back. But it was a sort of idea of a selfie that people could be creative right there
Right.
and be in that moment. Who am I now?
Mhm.
Who am I? You could turn around and be somebody else. Um,
Right.
but the idea of intervening with the system
Mhm.
was prominent in my mind,
Mm.
and the idea of power.
Mhm.
Later on, I sent cigarette smoke back to cigarette factories with 1,000 people. So I was operating in this other space, like
Uh-huh.
on the bridges, climbing on bridges
Yes, yes.
to keep terrorism off the front page for a day.
Mm.
So I got used to that sort of mega structure, that working in big public spaces and systems,
Mm.
deconstructing the nature of the system and using it to subvert its own sort of corruption
Mhm.
in a way. So to take over the mass media with a positive intention.
Mhm.
Um, and you of course accelerated in this space of working within the institution
Mhm.
and as a sort of catalyst for change within
Mhm.
the situation, and said so exhilarating for Fred. And I mean it's just I get quite a feeling of ecstatic feeling to think about your work, and of course the iconic mining the museum.
Right, right.
Um, but does mining the museum come before or after your Whitney performance as a museum guard?
Uh,
Do you remember?
yeah, I'm trying to remember if it can. I think the Mind the Museum came, yes, before the intervention of me as a museum guard.
And you were a dancer at one time, Fred.
Yeah, I danced, with I mean, I didn't professionally dance, but I took a lot of dance at Purchase and with Mel Wong, who was just terrific. I'm so sorry he's gone now, but he
Yes, I'm
was
sorry.
so terrific.
Yeah.
And because that was also very freeing for me. I was just curious about I took makeup for the stage with I forget the famous makeup artist who was teaching up there at that time
Oh yeah, it
and
was.
lighting.
There
Yeah,
was a
what was his name?
student, was his daughter was one of the acting students. This guy. Yeah,
Oh, right, right, right.
yeah.
Yes.
I think he did Al Pacino in Scarface or something like that too.
No kidding.
This guy,
Hmm.
I can't remember his name, but it was certainly a very um, formidable creative atmosphere at SUNY Purchase, no question.
Right.
Um, but I guess the question would be also
Yeah.
when you enter into the space of the museum, the Historical Society in Baltimore,
Hmm.
Maryland. Um, did you see that as a performance art experience as well?
Uh, in as much as anything I do is, I mean, I I realized early on that I think I may be repeating myself that I understood people that I met more than they understood me. And so, or who I was or where I was from, or everyone had their own preconceived notions about because of their upbringing, their what the state, what the country thinks about African Americans. And so I was kind of ready for all of it. And once you sort of kind of understand those kind of what do you call if it's not prejudice, it's just misunderstandings or just people's perceptions, then you're in control, and so I never had, I was always one step ahead of their thinking and understanding perhaps they're un, you know, much more uncomfortable than I was, like with the Historical Society. Obviously, Historical Society uh, would make anybody uncomfortable, but it's like that one. But but I was quite aware of of this alien coming into their space. Museums in general, I guess they've loosened up a little bit, or at least they've loosened up around me. But in general, keep a wall around them so that nobody kind of critiques or anybody who they don't respect. There's this air of, who would critique what we are doing because we know what we're doing. And so I think maybe it's just because I'm more involved, more of a museum person now than I was, back then. But it just seems that it's a little less like that now. But maybe it's just because I'm sort of deeply involved with the institutions now, and people know me. So, but in that, of course, I always felt that I was at an advantage coming in, knowing more than they thought I knew, or understanding more about who they are in the world than they understanding who I am, so that I really understood where their discomfort came from. So I was just very relaxed and made them relaxed, and then that's when all the nuances and I became able to hear and understand and be told all the kind of gnarly stuff within the institution, and sort of get the confidence of many people. And as I confided in them, because I needed them and they needed, me to, when I wanted to do my project, I needed them to lead me through what they knew so that I could pull out the questions I had from what they knew about the institution.
Maybe Emily wants to share some of these images so people have a sort of
Oh yeah.
grasp of what Fred was doing.
Right.
Can you give us a short elevator pitch about?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Obviously,
I
I put too much stuff in here, but
Okay, hold on. Uh, here we
well,
go. Here we go.
all right.
oh yes, and this
Just
sculpture was an early sculpture.
tell me to go forward, backward, whatever you want.
Okay. Where was this, in the beginning or the middle?
Beginning.
The
By,
beginning. Okay.
by the way, Fred,
Yes.
when I saw this work the other day, I immediately thought of Kiefer. Do you know this work of Kiefer where he has a woman holding like a ton of books over her head?
Oh, really?
And yeah, I'll send you the image later
Yeah.
on. But is well, there you go. But this must be after mining the museum.
I don't remember. It's the problem.
Well, did you start making objects like this, early in your work or later on?
Let's see. I'll tell you that right now. I've sort of mixed everything up in my brain. So Mind the Museum was in 91.
Right?
Well, that's when I first started doing the research at the museum.
Okay.
But then the rest of it came, I guess. Yeah, I think most everything came after it because
Yeah.
yeah. So
I mean,
it kind of made sense after I started. But you see, the thing is, what makes it difficult, because I worked at the Met and I worked at the Museum of Natural History and at MoMA, briefly. So all this stuff was going around in my head. It's just when I actually made the sculpture, I'm not really. I have to look through my CV, but
Yeah.
so pretty much these things that were rolling around in my head and then just putting them in a form came either after or longer to kind of pull out what I'm thinking, or just let it come out. And just from being in museums and kind of understanding their perspectives on their stuff. Yeah, and so that's Jansen's was my Jansen's from art history classes. Very glad to give it away or to actually sell it in this form.
So
But yeah.
mining the museum, what happened? What was it that caused such a radical change of perspective from within? What did you
Right.
do there?
Right.
Is this the picture
This
from
is
that?
this is the first. Yeah, this is from Mining the Museum. This actually is the museum space that was there when I got there.
Oh,
Yeah, this is how the display and there's I kind of dove in to sort of understand. They had thought about museum display in a long time, so I just wanted to kind of deconstruct some of these images because institutions or a lot of curators at that time, certainly there, would kind of use their knowledge of a particular field as their shield, and if you sort of look at it from a different direction, they totally don't know what to do. I mean,
In
sometimes
other
they
words,
know.
you go behind the shield. What happens
I
behind the shield?
Yes, and so and because they're looking at it for particular reasons, I'm looking for something else that seems to be glaringly obvious, and
So
they
let's
can't.
look at that painting in the back.
This painting was in my project.
Yeah, and the lower right hand corner. Who is
Well,
that?
yeah, later on you'll see very, very clearly. I mean, there's a couple of other images down the way. The I moved that painting to another environment to sort of pull it out of where it was, where it would not allow you to kind of, unless you're someone like me, looking for things like this. But you would totally not see those two boys one on the floor, one in the doorway, because you were not supposed to see them, and they were very good at making you see. Museums very good at making you see what they want you to see and not think about anything else. And so, uh,
Money, power.
yeah, well, the historical society, well, it was more power for these individuals because there was no money in the historical society, which is another thing that was a big facade that
Mm.
that they were, the patricians of Maryland, or of Maryland, uh, were in the board, but also the curators uh, made you think they knew everything there was to know, and there was nothing else to know. But they uh, they just rallied the wagons in a circle and then just talk their same language, and as if there's nothing else to know. And for us who were studied art rather than studied the scholarship of these things, seeing is above anything else. And so I kind of had something that they didn't have, which was being able to see other things within these artworks that was not their interest, so they didn't see it. And so in my exhibition, all I did was make everyone see it. And then it's sort of reflected back on the institution. Once you can't unsee it.
Well, let's see. There are more examples from that
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. Yeah. This was the first thing you saw off the elevator or the stairway was this globe. And the globe was in the storage. I sort of went in storage and brought things out that they never would show. And it's a globe that says truth across it. And it was a globe made for truth in advertising in I don't know, the 30s or 40s, but it was the first thing you saw as you went into my exhibition. So it just took on another meaning. And so it was surrounded by these busts. What you have here is this is Henry Clay. And let's see, all the way on the other side there. How do I get this? Can you see this guy over here?
Yes.
On
Uh,
the left side?
on the right side. Yeah, this guy here. That was Andrew Jackson. And this guy in the center is Napoleon. And so while this is not an international collection, they had a portrait of Napoleon there. I think his some niece lived in Baltimore at some one point. But but I wanted to put them all out there because they really didn't have much to do with the historical society of Baltimore. And then on the other side were these three empty pedestals, except they had labels. Benjamin Banneker, oh gosh, Frederick Douglass, and
Yeah.
Harriet Tubman,
Right.
and all of them from Baltimore. Nothing about them in the historical society. So so once I started pulling these things out, people began to get a sense of what I was doing. And then some of the curators started finding things that I didn't know was in storage. And so it was not that they wanted to be helpful, and they were, just as long as it was very clear that this was my project, not their project. So their scholarship was not affected by whatever I did. So
Yeah.
yeah, and there's that painting again. This the one next to that painting, on the edge of the wall, had a rip in it. I asked for a painting that had a rip in it, and because every museum has a painting with a rip in it, they just don't talk about it. And I looked at various paintings and said, "Oh, this is the one I want." And the rip was right across this patrician's face, hanging down, and so I made a video of a black man behind this. It's light because it's a video, but it was a black man looking through. One eye was the black guy, the other eye was the white guy, and uh, I had a voice come on and say, "Nobody knows I'm inside of you except Mama."
Mhm.
And on from there. So basically, thinking about people passing for white and very light-skinned people, and that became a real conversation because it was a video behind this painting, and they really had to talk about it to the public, what this idea was. Now I don't know this man had African roots or anything, but it was just to sort of bring that to the fore because of this other painting that John was talking about right next to it was very well. Just show the next slide. It was a very dark painting, but I added lights on there. This is a family of people and a family of from Baltimore, and then in the periphery you had these two black children, and they also had voices coming from them, like where's where's my mother? Who calms me when I'm afraid? Who washes my back? Things like that. And
Where were the monitors and speakers in the room?
behind the painting.
Behind the painting. So
Yes.
you heard voices, but not, um, there were no faces.
Just the faces in the painting.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. And so it's
Wow.
quite clear what this was.
Yeah.
And the voice only came on when you step in front of the painting. The lights only came on when you step in front of the painting. So, and the thing is, they had the names of those children. They just weren't listed on the label.
Right.
And they were, part of that household, and the owner of the household, including them, were sent them to a local school, and the school declined to have them. But so there's a lot of stories behind a lot of these these images that, I didn't go into detail. I was just trying, because I was sort of hoping for a meta picture of things that you think but you don't really know. You're not thinking about. You're thinking about and looking at what the museum wants you to think about, and not the totality of the story.
Yeah. I mean, from your point of view and your sensibility, what most people think of as juxtaposition are just sort of reality, how it is.
Right.
It's not necessarily juxtaposed. It's simply how it is.
Yes.
There's
Very
not a
true.
duality about it. It's what
Right.
it is.
Mhm.
And what is it? And you're giving us this point of view, this new way of looking. So Emily had a question about that. You want to ask the question, Em, or should I?
I think is now the right time for that question? Because maybe the juxtaposition. Okay, you can ask it.
So Emily was saying creating a practice of juxtaposition seems to imply a feeling of temporary interdependence.
Mhm.
Did this feeling come through in mining the museum, or did the juxtaposition of elements seem like new singular artworks?
Well, I mean, I like the idea that this painting is a new artwork, just changing its, that the reveal is changing the meaning so much that it becomes a new thought, a new painting. For the dyed in the wool kind of historic painting folks, they would have to see it, but could they turn it off? Maybe, maybe not. But
Yeah, you can't unsee it.
yes, and certainly for the public, it was, obviously very clear.
You're giving it a new life. You're giving the painting a new painting, a new dimension.
Right.
Emily, how do you feel about that? Any follow up on that?
No.
Yeah.
This painting is a similar situation. I moved this painting, and the director said, I looked at that painting. It was right next to the front door. I looked at that painting every day. I never saw that black child there. So that's an extreme, but it's a reality for when you want to see something, you see it. If it's not part of your world or your view or your interests, it just disappears.
I mean, this director was pretty radical in that he
Yes.
wanted to be part of what you guys were doing with Micah,
Right.
and with the No Museum project.
Right.
So he's quite someone to really admire. And eventually, the poor guy lost his job.
Right. Exactly. And it's because none of the other museums, but he felt that none of the other museums came to his aid, came to support him. I didn't realize, but he had only been there a couple of years. But so that said a lot about Baltimore in general, the museum culture there.
Yeah. I see that we don't have a whole heck of a lot of time left over, of course.
Just
That's how it
yeah.
is.
Yeah. Well, we can just go quickly through this. This one says Country Life by Ernest Fisher, 1850 something. And look, the next image, same painting, but it's called Country Life, but I titled it Frederick Serving Fruit, because it could have been Frederick Douglass doing that.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
again, just labels can really shift your viewpoint, what you see and what you think about.
Thank you,
So that's
Fred.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, this one, which has got a lot of images. But again, I did find
You have
shackles
to tell people what they're looking at.
Okay, well, it's really they're very proud of the Reposé silver tea service and all the Reposé silver that they had. And I worked with a silver curator, and then I looked in the ledger books and found these slave shackles, and the museum was also one of those places that were about the material of things, not a whole lot about where it was from or anything about it other than it was kind of the fineness of the material. So, these shackles are made of metal, so that's kind of how I spoke about everything in the exhibition, but then you couldn't ignore the other aspects that were quite different.
Oh, word.
Oh yeah, there's a close up.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
And the curators, sometimes I knew what they had, but since this woman in silver had nothing to do with that, she was the first time she saw it. But there were other things that were in that collection that,
Is the whipping
were
post in this series, Fred?
yes, yes. Oh, and this actually, this was from the next project I did in Old Salem in Winston-Salem, and where they apparently it's like a Williamsburg kind of environment. You walk around and go into buildings and things like that. And there is nothing, what George Washington slept in the tavern. It was, it's like one of those old spaces. And this one, uh, and there were obviously Africans working. They didn't live in the center of the community because they were a very religious group. And but I put together these two things. One is a leather Bible, and the other is a leather slave whip. Under leather bound was the label. Because there was nothing about the Africans there. You couldn't find them, but they were there. It wasn't a huge population compared to they were Moravians, so they didn't really deal with the outside world too much. But they had their Africans. They're Africans.
Fred, do you remember the book Cast?
Which one?
Cast.
Cast.
Yeah. It
No.
came
Oh,
out,
Cast. Oh, Cast. Yeah. Right.
right?
Yes.
And the fact that these Nazi lawyers got together and based the annihilation of the Jews basically on the Jim Crow laws in the United States. I mean, it's so pervasive across the entire earth,
Yes.
as you have later
Frightening.
contextualized as well in your work.
Yeah. Crazy. Anyway, that was. Oh, and I was looking for a place to put some artwork, uh, because it was a historic house village, and they were being used as historic houses for people to come and visit. And so I wanted another space, and there was this building that didn't seem like anything was being done with it. And I asked them, could I do something with this building? They said, sure. It was the Black Church, and we just use it for storage. So since they weren't using it, I thought I'd do a little something with it. So you can go to the next image. I put these silhouettes. I had a silhouette artist who was there make silhouettes of the local Black community, and I put them all across the grass because there were no stones for the folks who are in the ground. So I just made stand-ins as these silhouettes, and that's when you would go into the building. This is I said it was in North Carolina. You go into the building, and the next slide is. There were no stones anywhere, and they couldn't find the stones. They didn't know where they were. There was nothing in the storage. They didn't see there because there were burials in front of this Black church. Well, I had them lift the floorboards, and there they were, sort of just thrown under the church. Then nobody there knew how they got there.
What made you want to lift the floorboards, Fred?
Because I had looked behind the church, I looked around the church, I went to all the different buildings, and then what I found out was there was a Sunday school built on the front of the church for kids. And so that there were two different, there was the older building and then the newer building. And of course, being a historic village, they stopped their history lesson, basically, at the older building. So this new part had been built, but it was beyond their subject. So it was just there. It was attached to the major church. And I said, well, can I do something in there? They said, yes. And I said, well, can I lift the floorboards to see what's underneath the church? And I didn't mean that as looking for the stones. I just wanted to see what they were covering, if it was burial plots there. And then I saw it this way. And everyone was completely shocked. Timothy, a native of Africa, top one says, and then his year, and he said he played the violin. And this one, they all had their bits of information about the people who were the Black Moravians who were there. And nobody knows how long they were sitting there like that, or how they got there, or maybe when the Sunday school was built over it. But still, it was just an enigma. And so I lit that space like this so you could actually see what was under there. And I had their memorials because all the Moravians had memorials, and so did the Africans who were there too. Some who became Moravian, and some who were worked. But that's and still to this day, I have no idea. They've built another little building for the stones, but really they're not paying attention to it. If they right out the
These stones required a lot of labor to produce.
Oh yeah.
And so what was the sort of financial power behind that labor? Who commissioned these things? How did they do that?
It's all a mystery. It was obviously a white pastor for this black church back then. So when they were carved, and when people passed away. So, and when it was actually a cemetery for them. But when it kind of went into disrepair, I don't know when when all this occurred, and nobody does. At least nobody's talking.
Yeah. Wow. And this is happening all over the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Fred,
Exactly.
we're looking at the Venice Biennale
Right.
around the beginning of this present century, 2004 maybe?
Yeah, three.
very
Yes,
cool.
you're close. Yeah.
Okay.
And
you went to Italy for about a year,
yes.
immersed yourself in this Venetian culture. You produced this pretty innovative work, which included a performance artist. Well, you can tell us a little bit more, but ultimately, the Americans didn't find this to be very American art.
Right.
Which is quite a success.
Yeah, exactly.
You immersed yourself in the immediate culture.
Mm-hmm.
You absorbed that culture, and you transmuted it into this other experience.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
I had a project in Venice, Italy, that was intended to do the same kind of immersive experience for artists who would travel around the world, bringing aspects of old culture into the new one circulating. I called it the intravenous museums.
Oh, wow.
And I had my first base in Venice, across from the island of the Biennale. And Andy Warhol and boys supported that project.
Oh, fantastic.
Other artists. So it's interesting that we
cross
paths in these ephemeral
ships
spaces.
passing in the night. Yes.
But tell us about what you did at the Venice Biennale, Fred.
Well, I was interested in the Africans of Venice, and that from past centuries or contemporary times. And you can see them in various paintings, Carpaccio, Veronese, some of them, they're these characters in the paintings. And I was, you never hear anything about them and how they got there and why they were there. I mean, there was no, in those early centuries, there was not a slavery, but obviously there were wars and mercenaries and all sorts of reasons that people would become, and of course the Venetians would come up, and with their their retinue, which would be Africans as well. And so, but I was fascinated with what the invisibility of all that to not to Venetians, but except that, it was just part of the scene and wasn't thought about much. But like these two figures that you see on the Statua Uniti di America, these are scrims of the actual sculptures which are in the Frari Church in Venice, and they're about that size, and there are four of them. I only put the scrims of two, and because of the kind of crazy kind of relationship with it being Stati Uniti di America and these enslaved characters,
Oh,
but we were in
boy.
Venice, and they're
Oh, man.
so
Wow. It was quite American, actually, Fred.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. People, just that was funny. They thought it was very American. And I said, well, no, I didn't get these images in Venice. I mean, in the States, these are Venetians. And the Venetians all knew all the history of not the history, but the historians Venetian historians knew about these characters and others that are in Carpaccio's paintings and Veronese paintings, and you know, and so I just wanted to sort of bring them out of the shadows because they're as Venetian as in the history as anything else, and so throughout you had things like that, and additional combinations of things that I found. Those I don't think I have it in here. The image. Oh, there it is. There's one. In all these hotels, they have these boys holding this, a pillow, and I don't know if they had. Sometimes they had the hotel's cards on them or whatever. I don't know what they were originally for, but anyway, they were representing these boys that obviously lived and worked in Venice in years and years past, but the image is considered very Venetian. Um, but obviously I put the globe on his head because it's called the Wanderer, because they're all over the world. And you see these not with my head, but with the globe and stuff. Um, you see them in front of hotels. If you've not been to Venice, these characters stand in front of hotels or in their lobbies, and as a part of the Venetian scene. Uh, and
Fred,
I just, yeah.
when I was living in Venice for 3 years, one of my very good friends, who was actually a gallery owner,
Mhm.
told me anything south of Bologna is Africa.
Wow, interesting.
That was the attitude within Italy toward the
Wow,
Southerners.
wow, wow. Oh, about the Southerners, yes, yes, for sure, for sure.
That would be my family.
Yeah, how about that? Oh, and then
Oh, wow.
this is the first chandelier I did. This huge chandelier because the Venetian have these incredibly white and pastel color chandeliers, and uh, I wanted to do a black chandelier. The first thing that I thought of, paint the cupola in the pavilion, this color that you'd see in San Marco at the St. Mark's Church and Basilica, and then have a large chandelier.
And that's Venetian glass.
Oh yes, I mean when I first asked the guy, I said, "Hey, I want a chandelier." He said, "Oh, no problem, whatever. What do you want?" I said, "I want a black chandelier." He goes, "Black? Well, I can do that. Whatever you want." And 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 it was huge. And he said, "Well, I made sculpture for Yoko Ono, so I can do anything." So anyway, so that was the first one, and the project was called "Speak of Me as I Am," which is a line from Othello, who was the most famous Black Venetian that never lived. But and so that's kind of how the project started, and there are different aspects, sort of bringing that into the fold, uh, into this building. So that, I mean, hopefully, if you walk around Venice, you would sort of see another layer of the history that is untold and but very there.
Oh man, in Germany they used to have a candy. In my time when I was living in Europe, they would have a candy called the Moorkopf, which are the black heads,
Oh,
and there were
right.
these little chocolate heads in a box
Mm-hmm.
called Moorkopf, and I mean,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of that stuff has disappeared finally.
I'm not
It's
sure the
something else.
Moorkopf has disappeared. The
You know,
candy.
it's very true because I was in Germany, but they had these teacups with little black children on the cups. I don't know what that was about. But uh
So
so I started doing more of these projects and thinking about Othello, and that's kind of what this one is. This is I forget what the name of this one is,
what
but
was your basic relationship with Othello and your commentary about it? A little bit nutshell.
yeah, yeah. I just felt very, because of the Venice experience, but also Othello being the only major character in a Shakespearean play that was black and was about him and about what happened in that environment. And, so I kind of I really like Shakespeare and I like that particular play. And so I like twisting it around and thinking about aspects of it in making it work. This is To Die Upon a Kiss. That's the name of this one. And so I just I mean, and his writing is so amazing that I just use a lot of his titles. This for me, this one particular one uh, is like, as the title goes, To Die Upon a Kiss, which is when he killed himself. Uh, the kind of the life force of Othello kind of leaking out of the body, going down, and maybe his soul going up or whatever. I don't know what that might be, but so that's kind of how I think about these works. I kind of start to work on one, and or sometimes the image of the project spurs me on to think about what this would look like. This actually, I made this. My father was dying, and I came to realize as I was making the work and coming back and forth between. He lived in Spain, coming back and forth between Spain and Venice. Uh, this piece really kind of went beyond what I was thinking about between the Venetians and Othello. That's in it, but it's also about, you know, the life force of my father kind of just, leaking, going, emptying out of the body.
Not everyone knows that your father was an author.
That's
He
right.
was an engineer.
Mhm.
He traveled the world. He was a student of Krishnamurti,
Mhm.
the presumed um, last Buddha of this epoch. Krishnamurti was supposed to be
Yes, yeah.
this reincarnated Buddha. He renounced that position
Imposition, yeah.
and became quite an amazing spiritual teacher about 100 years ago. And your dad was highly influenced by Krishnamurti and wrote a beautiful book. What is it called, Emily?
Mind is
My
time.
Mind is
time.
Time, Fred's father's
Right.
book, which I hope we can explore more in our radio tuning fork one of these days,
Yes.
one of these weeks. Fred, it's like you've made objects, having come out of the institutional space, you started making objects that became art collection items.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it seems as though you're sort of inside the system, uh, integrating new values, new aesthetics, new language into the sort of industry of the art world. Um,
Right.
did you see it that way when you were doing this? Were you conscious that, oh, now I'm going to produce objects that will disrupt the way the industry works?
No, I don't think I was thinking along those lines. I just was, pushing in the directions that, inspired me, that made me want to make work and made me want to, and hopefully it's true. What is true is that, seeing something in a different form or a different color makes, shakes it up a bit. And and that was being in Venice was a great kind of space to have that happen because of course the Venetians know their cultures. And so this was something interesting for them. So it was interesting for them. I thought, well, maybe it's also interesting for other people. But and of course, they didn't take offense or anything. They didn't, it wasn't like that. The Venetians were very curious about what I was doing. And
Did you have dialogue with Venetian artists, Fred?
I did not meet that many. I met, interestingly, at the opening, one guy came over to me who was an artist, say he was an artist, and said that, his family had been Moors, but he looked like every other Venetian. So it was a long time ago and then I wanted to talk to him more, and he disappeared in the crowd of the opening of the vernissage. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, I want to talk to you. But anyway, I wish he would just sort of appear, but because he sounded really interesting. But
Well,
so yeah, it was a great place to try these ideas out because the Venetians were very curious and open to it.
now, Venice is a place where there are no motor vehicles other than water vehicles,
Right.
boats, little vaporetto, and little things like
Vaporetto.
that. Did you find that it was conducive to going in to your mind in a contemplative way, in a sustained way of immersing yourself in that culture, in that mentality?
Completely, because, without cars, things slow down, although sometimes I had to rush from one place to another, but, but really it's a different modality, and, and you're surrounded by all this incredible, things and beauty. And, yeah, it really does help the creative mind, I think, to sort of be there and try to come up with something. Once I came on my path, it was great to kind of be able to sort of draw out as much as I could in that environment. So it was very, very inspiring. These mirrors are also a process. These sort of piling of mirrors are also similarly of black glass, but and if they were so open and to something new, which was also very helpful. They were not critical or why are you doing that about us? No defensiveness at all. They were just enjoyed seeing what came out of it. And of course, I'm interested in beauty. So, and obviously they live in a beautiful place. They think about it. Maybe they don't, it's so surrounded by it, they don't know. They don't know to talk about it. But for me, it was just a really great, I enjoy going back to make more and other this kind of stuff. Uh, you know.
We'd love to talk with you more about your oh yeah, these are black tears.
Yeah, my drips, tears, could be ink, could be oil, could be, whatever you kind of imagine it to be. But it's very fertile. Again, a fertile form for me that I keep coming back to.
Um, just to jump ahead for a sec, I know
Yeah,
that you
sure.
have a public work at LaGuardia Airport.
Oh yeah, I don't think I put anything in. Too bad.
It's not
Anyway.
there, yeah. But if you could tell us just briefly about what is the intervention or installation at LaGuardia?
Yeah. I'm so sorry I didn't put one
It's
in
rather
there.
rather recent,
But
Fred, rather
yes,
new work.
yes, like a year or two ago. Amazing. It's been already a year or two. It's it's in a three-story atrium, uh, and it's kind of a globes cascading, large globes. The largest one is 11 feet in diameter, and then go down from that size. But they're painted globes, and then also some of these drips coming in between, uh, falling in between the globes. And this one is another. And so. Um, unlike this, these globes are huge and they're painted by myself and also my studio manager and some of these Germans who came and actually some of them were they were from other countries too. There's a Russian, a Slovenian, who were in Stedhagen when I was there working at this place. And so
how many globes approximately?
oh, how many globes were there?
I mean, we're talking 20
There,
globes
10 or 11, something like that,
at LaGuardia.
at LaGuardia. And you can see
Where?
them for every floor. If you walk into LaGuardia and you go to the right and you can't quite miss them on any floor, but they're in the atrium and you can sort of see them.
Would you say they're a meter in diameter? Or
One is the largest one is 11 feet, I think.
what?
Yeah, in diameter. Yeah, the largest one. And then it goes down
11
to,
feet?
yes, yes. It took a lot longer to finish
Yeah.
that project than expected.
You had to paint them with rollers, man.
Yeah, right, you'd think. But
Yeah.
no, we were all out there. Well, not, I mean, Jen was out over there doing her darndest to get this damn thing done. Uh, and then, as I said, these other folks from the local environment. And it was
Yeah.
great.
You did more thing. Have you done more things, let's say, in the world, in the outer exterior world, uh, over the years? You integrated more work publicly, and
Not really. I haven't had that kind of opportunity. So I would love to do something in other countries. And usually I'm invited. I've done things in us, the museum interventions in Australia, and one is coming up in Italy and in Paris and uh I've done them different cities, but nothing, individual artworks. Usually with museums invite me to do a project with their collection.
um, let's see.
That last globe that I showed with the little chandelier parts on the globe uh, was what did I call that? That one was very special. Oh my God, I can't even remember. Anyway,
The last work I think that we saw lately, is it in Columbus Park or something in Brooklyn?
oh yes, yes,
Yes.
yes, yes, and that one that was another really important one for me. It came down, and now it's in storage way out in the middle of I don't know wherever
We're,
Pay
we're
Store
going to
station.
steal it, Fred.
Yeah.
We're bringing it upstate.
Okay, I'll let them know.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I don't have a picture of it. It's funny, I did bring that. But yeah, it was another kind of project that was nice to do because it was kind of totally out of my realm. I was, and I just could mention that project was made of metal, and it was composed of figures inside of these environments, which some people call them cages. I don't particularly care to call them that, but in order to keep them safe from overnight, there were these in kind of uh, beautiful uh, metal enclosures for them, and it kind of came again partially from my father. I wish I had a picture of it. This is kind of crazy just to talk about it.
That's okay.
But my father was interested in you know, issues of consciousness, but also, oh gosh, now I can't remember his name. Yeah, uh, yes, yeah, William Blake.
Okay.
William Blake was another someone who he liked. He was really interested in his writing, and so the project is kind of also influenced a lot by my father as well as just notions of enclosure, notions of ideas of how the environment affects who you are and how you think. But without saying it, it's kind of hard to kind of describe it. But and it was the largest thing I've done. Besides,
What was it called, Fred?
it was called, Jen, I'm blanking now. What was it called? The thing in the park there.
Columbus Park, Fred?
Oh, yeah, Mind Forged Manacles, Manacle Forged Minds.
Yeah, well, your
And
dad also used mind in his book title.
oh yes, yes. And that is
I
partially
have it right.
a
I have it right here, Fred.
oh,
I'm going to screen share this, Emily. Okay.
Mhm.
Screen share. And there it is. Okay. Can we see that?
there it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. And it was right outside the courthouse there where people would go and they had holding cells right near it. And on this also far up on the hill there, you see it's a man on a pedestal who had been an abolitionist.
Back here.
Yeah.
Back.
And yes. And with these two black children climbing up to get to him. And on the foreground in front of the courthouses, it was Columbus. So it was a place with lots of other various meanings. And I've been interested in decorative metal because I'm interested in beauty, but also in what it obfuscates, perhaps ugliness, or just the way one might think about it. And so that's what this is about. Yeah. Yeah. Blake's Mind Forged Manacles is from one of his books also, Manacle Forged Minds, which is exactly, and I sort of flipped that, Manacles Forged Minds.
Fred, the figures, what are they from, or
They are from, I was in Senegal and started a project, and COVID happened, but I had these figures like that sent back to the States. They're the smallest one is probably larger than the ones than these figures. And so I blew them up so that they would be sort of more closer to human size, but also just they're casts of the wooden ones that I then blew them up to make them larger. And it was kind of what I wanted to kind of think about. There I am. Look at that. There I am painting these and these are the small ones. The big ones I left to Jen and and I forget what the boy's name was. What the boy's name?
so
Esteban. Yeah.
these are representing the natural resources on these continents, and you've deleted the political sovereignty, continents, names, and
Yeah.
countries from it.
Yeah, I just wanted to represent the environments, not have heavy laden political thoughts.
Let's see, I'm looking for a, okay.
Yeah, I guess that was my claim to fame there, that one image.
Well, we've got to get more on the record about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps
Yeah.
if people are comfortable, and Fred, you're comfortable going maybe 5 or 10 minutes over,
Oh, I'm fine. Whatever you want.
perhaps we can allow people to ask Fred questions or to interact with Fred. Let's see. Come back to the gallery view there. So that may have come as a sudden surprise to people that they can talk with Fred. But in the meantime, Fred, I wanted to ask you, Emily and I, from the perspective of Institute for Cultural Activism and what we're trying to do regionally and internationally.
Mhm.
Question here is when relating to the hierarchy of the art industry,
Mm.
is there a realistic chance for artists to actually shift the industrial paradigm to transform the value criteria of the art market, its historians, criticism, and legacy to be genuinely inclusive? Is there a chance that we can intervene in some way?
Genuinely inclusive. Well, I think it's only as genuine as the people who are doing it, and I think there's certainly opportunities for that um, in many different spheres.
Well, you remember CoLab and the Times
Yes,
Square show
yes,
and other, perhaps other intentional art, intervention communities.
yeah, yeah.
Um, we're trying to explore and introduce artists around the world to each other and to methodologies that could be helpful in
Mhm.
helping us in these dark,
Oh, yes,
apocalyptic times.
yes.
And you're perhaps you're one of the gifts, one of the many gifts you've given us is this method of deconstructing
Mm.
and reinventing systems,
Hmm.
giving them a new dimension, a new purpose
Hmm.
by shifting um, the value system
Right.
of a structure or a system. And we very much employ that with what we do. And Emily, for example, has her exoskeletal work called contemplative outerwear,
Oh.
which is like a baseball cap with all
Mhm.
this silky fringe hanging in front of your face so that when you move,
Wow.
when you breathe, when you speak, when you move, you have this expression of an exoskeleton
Ah,
of power and impact in the
wow.
environment.
Wow.
And I mentioned sending cigarettes back to cigarette factories.
Oh,
We've
yes.
worked with over 41 artists around the world, and I think that this deconstruction, um, analytic, and rebuilding of a new structure as art
Mm-hmm.
that has a traumatic effect, a sort of breathtaking or suspending the normal mundane mind thinking
Mm-hmm.
that we call a sublime trauma,
Hmm.
that art object acts as a kind of placeholder for
Mhm.
people to think, to feel their bodies, to re-examine
Mhm.
how the appearance of society uh, happens the way it happens to appear,
Mhm.
and how we can maybe work with that as a raw
Mhm.
material, change it.
Mhm.
So your work is very much inspiring on that level and other levels. And we just wonder, uh, do you see that method of yours as being perhaps learnable and applicable, not only in
Interesting.
art, but in everyday life, as you had your first encounter with that guy that thought you were Sonny Liston's son?
Yeah.
Can we learn that?
What a joke. Yeah.
Can we learn that?
Ah, that's interesting. That's curious. I think it, it's just about awareness, like so many other kind of certainly in Eastern philosophy, awareness is kind of a major thread. And I just so I'm not the one to kind of know how that works, but it's I do think that that's possible, uh,
Have you seen
especially
that? You've seen that sort of deployed or enabled through Eastern philosophy and practices? Is that what you're saying?
well, yeah, that's I mean to the degree that I've been around it, because my father and he has had a meditation camp in upstate New York, when he was in living in the States. Yeah, I think it really does, you know, shift our modality there in our bodies. You know, it's I think it's again a kind of a holistic thing that you just can't compartmentalize. Now I'm going to uh, do my you know, investigative work, or my kind of I'm becoming this other person now. It sort of has to sort of come together uh, with all these other techniques that have been around for a long time. I don't know. I don't know much about how to sort of, besides making work, how to kind of connect with people to kind of try to uh, uh, be sort of embody that. But yeah, I think it's certainly is possible. I'm sure you and your your work kind of does that too, and it sort of makes people aware. Awareness is a whole other thing that's important. Becoming aware of everything, of what your environment is, and how we ourselves play into it or don't.
And I think also that being cognizant of that awareness,
Yes, yes, exactly.
watching how that awareness can shift and change and
Right.
expand, um, from looking at it from
Yes,
yet another awareness,
yes, yes, it's true.
and that, you know, we aim to make work that and to support work and
Uh-huh.
turn people on to work that helps us do that.
Hmm.
So we're so, Emily, speaking on both our behalves, I think we're very indebted to you for
Oh,
uh, being so generous with your time and your soul here with us.
oh, well, it's been
Um,
great.
I think at some point it seemed as though you really inhabited an African American point of view
Hmm.
and occupied that position as an advocate and a transformer. Um, did you see having that agency uh, and the creative opportunities and resources that implied? Did you see that at a certain point? Well, like I'm, I have this access to the agency through my work, through my success, through
Mm.
association with you know, an important prominent gallery,
Hmm.
that you are actually enabled to empower
I would like
artists
to think
in the
so.
community. Yeah, well,
I would like to think so. You know, sometimes you do it through kind of what you speak about it, but hopefully through the work, which has a farther reach than I can speak to. It's you know, everybody will do it in their own way, obviously, but I think the work and or myself is kind of open enough to sort of allow various people's ideas and understandings, and you know, and do it their own way. But if what I do is helpful in sort of being more expansive and in people in their thinking, that's fantastic. And I mean, I got that through both of my parents, but in very, very different ways. My mother was the creative visual art person, and my father had these larger themes and larger consciousness issues of consciousness that he was very embedded in and indebted to. So,
one of the main topics when I read your father's book,
mhm,
and I'm reminded of Krishnamurti and the
mhm,
studies that Emily and I are involved with and our friends, as are you, that this idea of self
mm,
is the greatest addiction
mhm,
to ignorance.
Yes.
This idea of identifying with a me,
Mm-hmm.
I, with my opinions, with my
Mm-hmm.
judgments. These are the things that separate us from each other
Mm-hmm.
and separate us from our own sort of direct awareness of
Mm-hmm.
a body, mind, and a consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So your dad very much spoke to that.
Yes.
And this is sort of, have you changed your idea of Fred Wilson self-image over the years?
I guess so. I mean, I'm I'm not someone who kind of think about my self-image so much. I just do what I do. And but you sound so much like my father just then. It
Oh,
was amazing.
I'm
But
glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that
yeah,
because,
yeah.
you know, you and I both didn't have a lot of time with our fathers.
Yes.
There were other figures in my life, but
Mhm.
not a lot of time with the
Mhm. Right.
biological dads.
Right, right.
Um, so I'm glad when we can invoke
Yeah.
their spirit,
Yes, yes, yes.
and particularly in this sort of transcendental context.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, does anyone
I,
else
I
have
just,
a
yeah,
yes?
doesn't I just wanted to say that Adele wrote in the chat that you can find more images of the LaGuardia
Oh.
project on More Art Plus website
Oh, yes, the sponsors of the project, yeah.
and the Public
That's-
Art Foundation.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have
Thank
to
you,
write that
Adele.
down myself because I didn't know.
And
Great.
yes, does anyone have a question
Or a comment.
or a
Yes,
comment
really.
I like how with Ron Smith, he's always
in
he's doing this,
contemplation?
and I feel there's a pregnant something on his lips that's pregnant.
I do. I have something of a question for Fred,
Oh,
and that is
Oh,
the work. The work is very powerful, and part of the reason it's powerful is the context
mm-hmm.
in which it's presented.
Mm-hmm.
So, what happens to the work if you move it into another context?
Right.
For instance, the pieces that we just saw with the enclosures and the
Mhm.
figures inside.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen if that was moved, to Minnesota
Mm-hmm.
or someplace else? Is that, it's sort of a silly question, only in that your process seems to be so embedded
Mm.
in the physical place you're in.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a question of what, for me at least, what happens when the context is changed.
It's shifted. Well, I mean, that's interesting, specifically around that particular piece, because it wasn't only the shifting of it. Different people had very different responses to it because a lot of people, that's their outdoor space. And some came back and back and back. Others wish it would go away. And so, it's because it reminded them of something, uh, you know, something
Traumatic.
traumatic, yes.
Right.
And so that was something that because I hadn't done something in the public sphere to quite to that degree, I didn't realize that until after the piece came up, and that there's a lot of other, what I was thinking about and the ideas that I was trying to put forward. There was quite a variety of ways of thinking about it, and also people's experience with, incarceration. Say, it really, people either really felt they got it, they felt really strongly about it, or they felt it was just a little bit too much of a memory. And so, that was something, a learning experience for me, because it was
Well-
more abstract for me, even
Mhm.
though I was in a prison with my stepfather, who was a tailor, and he went into the prisons when I was a teenager to teach tailoring and dry cleaning to the inmates, so that when they got out, they'd have something to do, and I would go with him. And all those gates and fences is something, embedded in my mind. But it's also embedded in people coming by who's in their minds too of that experience. And so, it was a learning experience for me as well.
Remember the Walker Museum in Minnesota,
Oh,
in
yes,
Minneapolis, with
right.
the gallows. Emily and Sally very vividly were there in that
Mm-hmm.
experience. Uh, what do you remember about that, Fred? Did you learn something from that?
Uh, I, I, mm, I don't know that I did, because I don't know. Well, it didn't sound like something I would do, but it is. I just understand that it's, a tricky. It gets kind of tricky if you really, you know, how, people have their perspectives and their own life experiences, and so. Um, I know that the artist, I don't know him personally, but uh, you know, uh,
Yeah.
he felt very strongly about it. But I just think that it has to be a learning experience. And uh, if something is being understood as completely opposite of how you intended it, there there uh, there could be some way uh, to reflect on it and improve it, or um, really consider the context beyond the human context, beyond the kind of metaphorical uh, context. And because people have different experiences, and maybe also can't, not used to a visual language that you have to sort of, dissect. But again, we had, with that particular project, we did, and there were a lot of interesting groups that came, that and one was a group that um, are either previously incarcerated or incarcerated uh, um, folks who were back and forth between that system, who had a very good experience with it, although there's at least one woman who um, you know, they were concerned that it would re-traumatize her. And I had totally not understood that. It turns out she was fine with it, but it was just way outside of what I was thinking about when I made the work. And it does make you slow down and think, well, in the public sphere, it can be seen in any manner of ways, and you have to sort of accept it and understand, is this a direction you want to go in? Is this an overpowering, kind of something that overpowers it, that I have no control over in a public environment? So do I want to do that, or do I want to keep it as a, to an experience that you don't just come across, and you have you're not
Control.
expecting
No
anything.
control. Yeah.
No control, and they have no control if the
Yeah.
people coming to see it.
And,
So
and Fred, let's face it, after this COVID pandemic, people are so triggered. So,
yeah,
I mean, there's so much,
yeah,
trauma that's buried and sort of coming out in these bizarre ways.
mhm.
Just, walk down the street in Manhattan and bicycles going this way and that way. It's
Don't get me started. Yeah,
no, it's a formidable time of ripe mental breakdown,
right.
and understandably.
Yeah, I think with the piece you mentioned, John, at the Walker Art Center, that piece, the Native American community, I think they all agreed to
Yes.
burn it.
Right,
And
right.
so I think that's an interesting the artist also agreed.
Yeah.
And I think he maybe sold them the work for, like, he gave over the rights.
Right, right.
I may not have everything perfect, but I find that a really interesting resolution to
Yes.
be going through that process.
Right, right.
It might have been preempted had he begun with the community in the first place.
Right. I mean, that was also partly the museum.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the museum.
The Walker was,
Yeah.
yeah.
But this is the thing, Fred. We're separating ourselves into silos,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not sort of seeing the common ground.
Right, right.
And these are examples, where these friction points are
Right.
occurring that might otherwise have been anticipated, and a healing could have happened for all parties.
Right, right. But just how
It's
it's handled.
interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is what we're working with now. These materials
Mm-hmm.
of psychic disorder and disruption to our social fiber.
Right, right.
It seems to be institutional and systematic.
Mm-hmm.
So one asks oneself, where is the subversive activity occurring?
Mm-hmm.
Within the cultural community, or, within the industrial community that seems to be causing quite a lot of violence and destruction.
Right.
But John, I want to. I also think it's a good question for the artist to ask. How much responsibility does he or she want or need to take on around the reception of the work that's being created? And it seems to me that if you try to take on too much responsibility for how it's going to be received, you're in a way, you're cutting yourself off or shooting yourself in the foot, or you're compromising the work. So it's an interesting ongoing question that I think all of us face as we create work, personally, publicly, wherever.
Is this something you've been thinking about, Ron?
Yes, quite a bit, actually.
Or will you develop some writing about it?
I'm not ready to do that yet. It has all sort of grown out of the recent trip I made to India. And it's going to take a while for me to put some of those pieces together. So eventually something will come out. But I'm not at the point to put pen to paper right now.
When we climbed on the bridges in 1977, several people said, there are guns on those bridges. You could be shot. And we took the risk. But I dare say if we did something like that today, time and place being quite different, context different, well, there'd be a much different outcome, I think.
Right.
It wouldn't win the best news of the year.
Right.
So yeah, I think there's one of the things that Fred is also offering us is this idea that the empathy that he has and has had with the so-called hierarchy, and has also given him extraordinary insight. And with that insight comes perception and a sensibility or sensitized body-mind to intuitively find just that perfect balance, Ron. And that's this sort of a difference between being self-absorbed and being interactively interconnected. The interconnectivity, I think, is where we fail to really be thoughtful beyond our own egos. Anyway, further discussion for the Institute and our spring conference upstate, Ron. You're welcome. Fred, by the way, Meredith
Thank
Meredith
you.
Monk lives in the town where we live.
Oh,
And we're trying to really enable that work to come up state.
Mm.
So maybe we can have it there one day for the students, the
uh-huh,
multi-racial, multicultural community up there. Talk about changing the context.
Right, exactly.
Go ahead,
Interesting.
Em. Sign off.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your work with us, Fred.
Sure.
It's thrilling. I so appreciate it. Thank you all in the audience. And John, thank you for your questions.
Well,
Adele says thank you from the chat.
Enjoyed it.
Renee says thank you very much. Wonderful talk and work.
Oh, thank
So-
you. Thank you so
um,
much.
just a note, Ron, I didn't mean to imply that there was going to be a conference upstate, but I'm not saying that there won't be.
You're taking the middle way, I see.
That's how we roll, man. That's how we roll.
Okay.
If that stone gathers a little moss, let's see how it goes.
Okay, let's talk about it another time.
You bet. Fred,
Thanks.
you're a wonderful man.
Oh, thanks.
Brother, always. We love you so much.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Fred. And this
Ciao.
will be on our archives, Emily, right?
Yes.
In the next few days.
Mhm.
Yep, we'll share it with
Make it
you.
available.
Great, great.
Buonasera.
Buonasera. Grazie.
Ciao.
Ciao.
We eat together soon, Fred.
Yes, good idea.
Okay. Insieme.
Okay.
Ciao, Margaret. Ciao, everybody.
I will.
Thank you.